8 spreadsheets, 1 per outlet. I deleted that job and charged 15,000 for it. That was a restaurant group in Sydney. 8 outlets, 1 Google Sheet each, typed by hand. And every month, the owner copied each one into another Google Sheet. And I replaced the whole thing with one system they run by talking to Claude. And they didn't start at 15,000. They start at nothing. And we'll come back to that because that's the part that matters most. And I'll show you the shape of it, what makes it 15 grand as opposed to 5, and how it went from free build to signing off on this. Hi, my name is Patrick. I spent the last 20 years inside the world's largest organizations like Apple, Lufthansa, among others. And now I build AI systems for businesses in public. 2 repository. That's the whole shape. A gateway and a plugin. Open the gateway up and there are multiple tools inside of it. That's the whole box. An MCP endpoint, a tool layer, an authorizations and credential store, cron jobs, and a dashboard that human logs into. The endpoint is about 20 lines. It starts the handler, registers the tools, and stops. Everything interesting is 1 level down. On the other side, the plugin, a routing agent that uses the gateway API key, choose the right skill, and use it. A skill is a markdown file. When someone asks for this, do these steps, in this order, call these tools. Let me walk one request all the way through, because that's the bit no one shows you. The owner types the questions into Claude, the routing agent reads it and picks a skill. The skill calls a tool on the gateway over the internet, carrying the encrypted API key. The gateway hashes the key and checks it against a table. Wrong key, nothing happens. It says so instead of blowing up. Then the tool does its job. Maybe it reads a database, or maybe it calls out something else first. And it hands back compact JSON, which Claude turns into a sentence that the owner can read. Outward, the gateway holds every credentials for every external systems in a vault, server sides, and it's encrypted. Some of that runs on a schedule when nobody's watching, and some of that happens because somebody asked a question 10 seconds ago. And downwards, there are 2 ways into the database on purpose. The gateway's own client bypasses every security rule because that's the one enforcing them. The one behind the login obeys them all. The skill never gets either. They ask the gateway and the gateway decides. No database credentials in the plugin, no copying data into someone else's laptop, and no copy of data floating around in a spreadsheet. In practice, it sounds like this. What did we spend on packaging last month? And which outlet was worse? Answers come back in seconds of real numbers. No report to build, no filter to remember. They ask the questions the way they'd ask a bookkeeper. That's the part that people underestimate. The client never learns a new app. They already know how to talk. Now let's talk about the money, because that's the actual question. I still build websites, 5 to 6,500. That's a real product, and I'm not taking anyone out of it. But a website is a thing that they look at. Now this is a thing that they run their business on, and that's a whole difference. And it's worth up to 3 times as much. Think about what it actually replaced. 8 restaurant managers typing numbers into 8 different workbooks, and an owner stitching them together at the end of every month. And that's not a small job. It's a day of someone's month, every month, forever. And it's wrong by the time it's finished. Because the moment you copy a number from one file to another, you created a second version of the truth. Month end used to be a build. Now it's just a review. That's the sentence I sell, and that's the one that lands. The pricing rule I give you is this. Price the thing that it replaced, not the hours you spent. Nobody's paying 15,000 for a database. They're paying to never do month end again. Let's build the gateway, because that's the half that matters, and it's the half that people skip. Next.js on Vercel, an MCP handler, super-based Postgres behind it. Nothing exotic here, and that's deliberate. You want boring here. This is the whole MCP route. It registers the tools and stop. The file stays small on purpose because everything interesting happens in the tools themselves. One tool start to finish. Watch the shape, because every tool I built looks like this. Validate the key, check the caller is allowed to do this, do the work, write it down, and then return something to the model that it can read back to a human. Then there's stuff that nobody asked for. Most of the invoices and costs for this business arrives by email via a shared mailbox. So the gateway polls the mailbox on a schedule and queues up whatever shows up. And the queue matters more than it sounds. It's a difference between a system that forgets and a system that tells you when it forgot. Anything still in the mailbox will be shown in the dashboard. 14 of them. The oldest one was 9 days old. No one has to remember to check. Here comes the design call that most people get wrong. I automate it by transaction count, not by dollar value. Their biggest supplier is about half the money, and that's about 20 invoices a month. 20. The tiny stuff, the cash delivery, the odd delivery, that's small money, and somebody touches it every single day. Now, if I optimize for dollar value, I would build a beautiful importer for one supplier and left the daily grind alone. That makes the daily entry screen the most used surface in the entire system. Phone first, not a desktop first and a mobile as a fallback. The person filling this in is standing up, holding a paper, and in the middle of a shift. If it needs a laptop, it doesn't get done. 2 schema decisions save me weeks, and both sound too simple to matter. First, the system registers a new suppliers the moment it sees a new one, instead of asking somebody else to set it up. Every invoice after that gets checked against the list. So the thing that's normally a settings page that nobody maintains, now just maintains itself. Second, one table owns the truth for each fact, and everything else points at it. When 2 tables can claim to be truth, you'll spend your life reconciling them. Authorizations I keep deliberately small. Email invite-only system, no self-sign-up. The owner invites their manager, and that's the whole user system. You're building for 9 people, not 9,000. Every login support option is a call that you'll take on a Sunday. And deploy is genuinely boring. Push to Vercel, set the environment variables, point the cron to the right queue. The whole thing runs on an infrastructure I don't manage. And that matters for a small team, and the clients expect you to go live on a public holiday, for example. Standing a new one up is 4 commands, and none of it requires for the screen to exist yet. Seed the DB schema, issue a key, create the owners, and invite the managers. The key gets printed once, and then it's gone. I only store hashes. So if somebody breaks into my database, they only see hashes, not a working key. The first user is a special case worth knowing about. The owner can't be invited because there's nobody there yet to invite them. That's the engine. The half the clients see is the plugin, and they install it with just 2 commands. The connections is 5 lines of JSON, a name, and a URL. That's genuinely all of it. And one settings that the client fills in is the API key, encrypted. It rides along on every call that the plugin makes. Inside, there's a routing agent that reads the request and picks a skill. And here comes what I had backwards for a while, and most people do. I thought skills should be thin, call the tools, hand back the answers, and stay out of the way. Well, they're not thin. One of mine is 400 lines, and almost none of it is instructions for calling tools. The gateway owns the data, but the skills own the judgment. That's the split. What that means in practice, the mailbox poller queues every attachment it can find. It has no idea what any of them are. An invoice and a statement of account looks very similar, but it means completely different things. Something has to tell them apart, and it's not the database. The skill teaches the model how to look. The tell is the shape, not the title. Item lines under one invoice number is an invoice, even if someone types a statement across the top of it. The rule is there because the first test run got it wrong. It files a statement of account as invoice, and then I have to unpick by hand, and the damage went past untidy. Reconciliations never rechecks what a document filed as. So the junk row gets reconciled anyway and invented a variance that didn't exist. If this was live, the owner will be spending an afternoon chasing a supplier for money that wasn't missing. The incident became a rule in the skill. That's what a skill for. The other half of judgment is knowing what to do when it's not a clean invoice. A document ends up in one of 4 ways, and only one of them is filed. Not a money document at all, for a reason. The mailbox is shared with other emails, so price lists and receipts, they turn up as a routine, not an edge case. A money document you genuinely can't read with a reason. A scan too dark to read is still an invoice. That's classified as failed, not an invoice. Or deliberately left alone. Statement of accounts stay in queue on purpose because the month-end run needs to find them. That's the queue doing its job, not a backlog. And this is the part that bites. Saying it in summary is not the same as closing it. You leave one document open and it blocks the entire month-end close for all 8 outlets because nobody knows yet which outlet it belongs to. A helpful paragraph in the report changes nothing. The agent have to write the state down. No curl, no secrets in a scale file. If it needs something, it needs to ask the gateway for it. It also means the client can read the scale. It's a markdown file. An owner who wants to know what the thing does can open the file and find out. On the other build I have, the skill drives a browser with the client's own password. No shared logins, no shared passwords, nothing scraped. They've already paying for the data. The system just uses the seat they've got the way a staff member would. That one detail has closed conversations than any other features I've built. The questions I get the most: do you give Claude access to your client's database? Yes, I do. Through tools, not credentials. Follow the API key and the whole thing makes sense. The gateway mints an API key from its own dashboard. That key goes into the plugin config, and it's the only secret the plugin ever holds, one string. Every tool checks it before it does anything. Wrong key, no work, nothing written. The database credentials never leave the server. Claude ends up holding a key to my API, not a key to the client's data. And it's stored hash. Even I can't read it back out. And I can kill it from a dashboard without touching the database. Lose a laptop, and that's a 30-second job. Revoke, issue a new one, you're done. Nobody rotates a database password at midnight. Nothing that matters happens without a person saying yes. No outreach goes out unapproved. No month-end closes itself. Every client I pitch has the same worry underneath the questions. What if it does something dumb while I sleep? The gate is the answer, and I sell it as a feature. The system does the boring 90% and stops at the part with consequences. The other half of trust is who's allowed to type what. My rule: nobody enters a number that have to go and ask somebody else for. A manager know what they spent on cash today. They don't know the rent. They never see a rent field. And that's enforced in the database, not in the interface. Hiding a field in the UI isn't security, it's decoration. Last piece, every automatic number drills through a document behind it. Click an invoice and see where it comes from. click a figure, see the invoice it came from. That traceability is the whole reason why you leave Google Sheets. A cell in a workbook can't tell you where it came from. There are only two roles in the whole system, an owner and a manager. I tried splitting it further once, and it's worse in every way. A manager can only manage his or her own restaurant and nothing else. Not a hidden tab, not a grayed out button. The data for the other 7 restaurants is not displayed at all. And every write records who typed it. Not to catch anybody out, but if the number is wrong in the month of November, you know exactly who to go to because each manager manages his own restaurant. Here's a demo that closes a nervous owner, and it takes about 30 seconds. Log in as one of their managers using their own data and watch as the other restaurants are not being displayed. All the owners I showed them have stopped asking me about security questions. Telling them about row-level security means nothing. Watching their own restaurants managed securely does the trick. 2 mistakes, because the versions that I got right the first time isn't useful to anybody. 1. 7 credentials, because at the time the client hasn't decided to migrate from Google Sheets to Supabase, so we had nowhere to store those credentials securely. Yeah, it worked, it shipped, but it's wrong. Every call carried the client's whole keys on every single call, and the plugin has to be trusted to carry all of them every time. Today, it carries 1 key that I can switch off. Same behavior, but just more secure. 2, and this one worth remembering. My spec had a mistake in it, but Claude implemented it perfectly. A diagram in my own document showed 3 things where there are only 2. It built the 3 confidently and reported an empty columns every month. When you build from a written spec with an AI, an error in the spec becomes an error in the code, fast and without an argument. I read my own diagrams like a stranger wrote them now, which changes what the hard part of the job is. Writing a code stopped being a bottleneck a while ago. Knowing whether it does what it's supposed to do is the bottleneck now. For each phase of this build, I wrote a verification script, not a unit test, a script that does a complete test with a real database. Every claim I made about how it behaved is something that the script actually ran. It's safe against production too. Everything it writes is tagged, and it deletes everything in a cleanup block, including when it fails. And it refuses to start if the money table already have rows. I never want that script to be the thing that discovers real data by deleting it. The assertions are written in plain English. A partial month says so on the rows. The reason says why. Read them and you know what the system promises. Now the part I promise you. Nobody hands the $15,000 for a system they can't picture yet. The client came through from a free build offer we have. 7 days, no invoice, no contract. 2 agents, that's all it was. 2 skills in a plugin, doing 1 job each, and doing them properly. By the time we spoke about anything bigger, they already watched something I built doing real work in their business for over a month. And that's the whole play. Deliver value so high and so valuable that the upsell is not a pitch. It's the obvious next step. I wasn't selling them on me anymore. They already know how is it to work with me. In the middle of it, I hit an objection. They want to stay on Google Sheet. And that's fair. Google Sheet is what they know. It's free, and the whole team could already use it, and they don't have to learn anything new. Arguing about databases would have gone nowhere. Nobody wins that conversations with a list of reasons. So I built them a preview instead, using their actual numbers, their list of outlets, built on an actual Supabase. And it's not a mock-up. I actually backfilled all their historical data into the database. So what they see is their own actual numbers. 1 screen. I showed them what a month end would look like with their own numbers. And that's what changed it. Not me talking, which is the same lesson twice really. Both times, the thing that moves it, it's seeing it at work, not hearing about it. If you take one thing from this, build the small things for free and show the big things instead of describing it. Before any number comes out of my mouth, I do one thing. I count the number of integrations. Not the features, not the screens. I number the amount of times that the system has to touch something that isn't mine. A mailbox, a point of sale, a data provider they already pay for, somebody's accounting software. Each one is an edge. Screens are predictable. I can build a screen on a Tuesday. Edges are where all the surprises live. It's the only one that ever blown a timeline for me. Because an edge is not a code. It's somebody else's login, somebody else's rate limit, and a format that change without ever telling you. The scoping call is mostly just one question, asked a dozen different ways. Where does this number came from today? And I keep asking until somebody says, oh, and there is also. That sentence is the one that costs you a fortnight. Then I write down what's out, on paper, before anybody signs. Everything that I'm not touching is in version 1. That list is the reason this finish. Without it, you don't have a project. You have a subscription to somebody else's ideas. The price follow the edges. That's the honest answer why one of these is 10,000 and another one is 15. Same architecture, same tool repository, more things to talk to. This is not a formula I'd hand you because your rate is not mine. But the shape holds. Count the edges. The numbers moves with that, not with how many nights you spend on it. You still don't sell it by describing the architecture. Nobody's buying a gateway. You sell the 9th spreadsheet that the owner has to do. Ask what they're rebuilding by hand every month and offer to delete that job. And every business has one. A file somebody puts together from another file on a Sunday because that's the only way they can see the real number. And the second build is much faster than the first. Same bones, a different business on top. That's the moment it stops becoming a favor you did once to becoming a product that you actually sell. If you build one of these, start with the gateway. Get the data and credentials first. The plugin is the easy half, and it's the half that changes. The gateway is the part that you'll still be running in 2 years.